Okay, so I've jumped ahead and completed the rest of the scene with simple geometry that we can now map the image directly onto and provide the illusion of a 3D scene generated from a 2D photograph. If I just jump to this view, you can literally kind of see how simple the geometry is. There's not much to it, and it's really basic. So the next thing we need to do is produce a shader which will project directly through the camera straight onto the surfaces. So what we need is the hypershade. So go Windows, Rendering, Hypershade. And the kind of material we need is a surface shader, because a surface shader provides no light information, so it's only going to show what the photograph represents. So if we just double click the surface shader, this produces this, and if we just rename it, let's just call this Uni Projection so we know where we're up to. So Uni Projection. Okay, and now we know it's called this. So with this selected, we want to go to the out color, choose the end option, and this will bring up some render nodes. Now what we want is a file, but before we choose file, we want to right click and say create as projection, and this will add quite a few different nodes to the workflow. So first of all, with the place 3D, we don't actually need that one because it doesn't do anything at all. So there we go. That'll be the kind of system setup for what we need. So under the projection node, we need to select this, and where it says projection type, we need to change it to perspective. Move down a little bit. In the camera projection attributes, we need to turn link to camera, and we say projection because that's our projection camera. The next stage is add our file. So we select the file node, select the directory, select the image, and say open. And then we've got our surface made. So if I just select everything in the scene, minus the locator, minus the camera, and say assign existing material and choose Uni Projection. So then if we view this, we can see that everything from that angle has now been projected directly through a camera, and it only worked from a certain kind of angles. So if I look at this and put it in projection camera, we can see that everything is kind of mapped exactly as it is, and the photograph just falls perfectly. Now I've already added a camera to speed up the process. So this is the projection camera that the image is looking through, and then I've added a separate camera which will just kind of render a view out, so we can see the kind of movement that this has by simply moving in simple pan. So if we now look through the projection camera and play the projection cam, no, through the normal camera, sorry, because the projection, this is the camera that's going to render the view, and press play, we can see how the kind of parallax effect works. Now obviously there's some issues at the moment because the image is now starting to begin to repeat again at the top of the image, and also there's some issues with parts of these front walls starting to project onto a back wall as it moves, which we don't want. For instance, we can see this part of this pillar also there, purely because this is a slightly different angle to what the camera projected the image. So this is something we need to kind of resolve. So the easiest way to do this is to create two different images, one being the original one, which is this, which is completely fine, on one where there's been kind of like it's been modified to reduce kind of assets that are being projected onto the wrong pieces of geometry. In this instance, I've just kind of taken the top section and removed everything. So the only part of all the models that this entire photograph will get mapped to is this section of the building. So to do this, we need to kind of create another shader. So if we just go back to Maya, we get the hyper shader again, and what we want to do is make another surface material. So we create another surface material, move this out of the way, call this one Uni Projection Matte. Then again, add a file. Select a different image of the matte version. So with the file selected, select the matte painting version, open. We can again get rid of the place 3D texture, don't need that one. And then this time, select the building we want just that one to apply to, so we want these two, and then just apply the different materials. So apply existing, Uni Projection Matte, but we forgot to change over the projection type. So from planar we need to remember to put perspective, and then link to camera we also need to do projection camera, and then that means that the different image is mapped on to different from the same camera but with a different texture, providing consistency across the image. So if we just go back to this view, select the cam that we're going to record through and press play. Now all the issues that were now behind and getting projected onto the back wall disappear. So if there is issues, it's a case of just doing matte paintings on a different version and applying it to a different part of the geometry. Then the other issue now we got is the sky. So that can just be replaced with a simple blue plane. So again we can kind of come in, create a different shader, another shading, another surface shader. Make sure we just move these away. Call the surface shader sky. Get the surface shader. Select the output color. Make sure we right click, say create projection. Roll these down. Again, we don't need to place 2D texture, so that can be deleted. We need to sort out that the planar is perspective, the camera attributes is using the projection camera, and then just source a file which I've called sky, just a blue plane. Now if we select the blue plane, all we've got to do is assign that sky texture, so surface shader 1, because we didn't rename it to sky. And now if I look through the projection, through the normal camera and play the file, all the issues with the top bit repeating are now been removed. And that wraps up the process of how to create a camera from the correct field of view, align the geometry, and then build other geometry relative to initial starting point and project a texture directly onto the polygons. So areas for further research now, for further independent research, is how to bake the textures from the projection down to the actual model so they can be taken into an external package, and also exporting cameras into a UE4 and incorporating them into a matinee sequence so everything kind of matches. But that's the end of this tutorial, focusing on camera mapping techniques.